So thank you for sitting down with me today, Janice, to talk about your feature film, Chuck Chuck Baby. As I've alluded to off screen, I'm based in Cardiff. So to see a film made in Wales by female filmmakers and revolves around amazing women is just like so inspiring to see. So could you just give the people watching a little bit of a rundown about the film and what they can expect?
Chuck Chuck Baby is a film of love. It really is a film that platforms working class women. It's a celebration of female love in all its forms, and with the added touch of it's also a musical. So I describe it as a musical kind of rom com, but with a very kind of undercurrents of political tones going on.
Yes, definitely. I think many people have seen working class films, very sort of male dominated space, in the 90s, noughties, very political, like you say. But this is a lot more refreshing, like with the female aspect, female love story like this, yeah, and throwing in music as well. I think, yeah, it's really refreshing to see, which I absolutely loved. I missed this film, and it was Iris Prize as well, about, oh gosh, almost about a year ago now. We've
Yeah,
taken it to Edinburgh and Toronto. What's the reception been like for such a kind of local, personal story to you? How's that been sort of worldwide?
it's been incredible, actually. I mean, we started at Edinburgh, and then obviously the big one was Toronto, in a way of, oh my God, we're taking it to a totally different audience
Yeah.
that may not understand the regional aspect of the film. I mean, though the film was shot in Flintshire, which is where I come from, I was never going to shoot. It's not set in Flint, but it is shot around that Flintshire area. And I just thought, how is this going to translate? We have a very strange dialect, we're kind of part Welsh, part Scouse, a
Hmm.
bit of Mancunian thrown in there.
Yeah.
But the reception was unbelievable. We were kind of showing it to sold out audiences, 300, 380. It
Wow.
was extraordinary, and people just loved it. And I think what people love about it is, even though the film is quite kind of, I would say, British, it still deals with very universal themes. And I also think women all over the world are so delighted to see a story that really represents them, no matter where they come from. It was always very hard for me to get this film financed because of the age of the women in the script as well. So, it's gone to Toronto, it's gone to Palm Springs, France, Zurich, all over Europe, and it just seems to be this hunger for more films that are really focused on female characters.
I mean, when I was watching this film, I definitely thought this is what I was going to show my mum. My mum is very much, my mum's 68 now. So I think like the music, the kind of, she stayed in the town that I've grown up. So when I go back there, I have those same sorts of feelings that Joanne did, in some ways, this kind of small town mindset. So I think, yeah, it's an advocate for, like you say, having an older women and their sort of friendship groups, it's so joyous and people don't really,
Yeah.
they don't discriminate like Helen in this, like they're just like, oh yeah, go for it, and, like love whoever you want. And it's such a positive film overall.
One of the reasons I started writing the film, because I just thought the world had gone a little bit too scary for me. And I was just like, where's the love coming? And I just thought, let's tell the story about these two incredible women who've had quite brutal pasts, who find a real beauty in their present lives. It was really important to me to make it positive. And I come from a working class background. If I go back into my life and growing up, there was a great sense of, despite not having a huge amount of things in the world, um, there was great feeling of love and freedom, and that's what I wanted to show as well. These incredible women, who the kind of women who brought me up,
Yeah.
who worked, non-stop, and but found this great sense of support and camaraderie within each other, within the community.
Definitely. Well, that's definitely come through from my experience. So yeah, you definitely smashed that one. Obviously, you sort of alluded to already, it's a very personal story to you. If it's set sort of in those sorts of areas you grew up in. And there's a moment that I found when Joanne walked into her bedroom and you see all those posters and the music. That's when we sort of get the musical element coming into this film. I was curious to know, was that what your bedroom was like when you were younger? Were those the exact posters? Like who chose those on the wall?
Well, we shot this film in 26 days, and I always talk about what we had to do. I mean, the money wise, we were very low budget film.
Mm.
For me, really, the story of Joanne walking back into that room is I think that the song also tells the story of how she kind of fled it as
Yeah.
well, which is the musical aspect and how we use music. But we can go on to that in a bit. But my bedroom, good God, I shared my bedroom with three sisters and one brother. God bless him.
Wow.
I think we had a mixture of Sting, Manchester United, Blondie, but obviously posters on there were just printed by the amazing production design team because obviously copyright,
Yeah, of
so we had to be
course.
careful. But I did want that kind of visual of all these female faces surrounding her and her kind of seeing how she was brought up and the strength she got from the women on the wall was what that was kind of indicating.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I've literally, as I sit behind me, I've got posters of films, music artists that I love. Like, it's still something I do. It's quite
Yeah,
childlike, but
yeah,
it inspires me constantly. I've film
yeah,
posters over here, so I love that kind of moment. It sort of really, struck a chord with me.
yeah, yeah.
So as you've touched upon there, Janice, about the musical element, it's a musical comedy drama, and it utilizes music in a different way. Most people be lip syncing to songs in a musical film. I was just curious to know why you use this technique of, singing along on top of the tracks. Why did you choose that?
I've always done it actually in all my work, and it's I always use music. I was brought up very much with music, and somebody said to me, "Where does this come from?" And I think it all begins with my mother, who worked in a printing factory, and her shift was 6 till 2, and she'd come home with a blue overall, and she was obsessed with musicals.
Mm.
So it'd be a musical on, and her in a blue overall, and it's always stayed with me. I mean, going right back to when I start writing the script, the music is already picked. I
Mm.
know the characters, I know the story, I know where we're going. So then the music comes in. So the music is part of the narrative. Now, the way we use music in the film is very much it's a personal aspect to the character. So very much how we use music in life.
Mm-hmm.
If we've had a heart broken, we play a song, we let it kind of reach us and let the words reach us and the music reach us before we burst into anything. So it's always done very subtly. It always comes from a source, but it is really how music is personal to us all, and to each and every character in that film. They all have a personal piece of music. So um, it's always something I've done. I think because we live with music, all of us do. And for one instance, I always talk about my dad, loved John Denver, and he loved Annie's song, and he was always dancing around to it in a very light-hearted, beautiful way.
Mm-hmm.
And I lost my dad just before finishing this film, and we had Annie's song at his funeral, and it was a totally different experience.
Yeah, it's
And that's
amazing what
how
that
it is
does.
within the film. So
Yeah, definitely. Like you say, like music's impacted myself. I listen to music every day. It takes me back in time. I was very much a fan
yeah,
of musical films. I was brought up on Oliver Twist. I watched the Blues Brothers way too young. So yeah, any sort of those film musicals, I just think I like classic cinema.
yeah, I think so. And it's kind of, for me, it's just, I think anybody, especially when I was growing up, music was a thing of life. Whatever you
Mm.
didn't have, as long as you had a record player, you were living brilliantly. And also going back to the days of the chicken factory, when I did start working in the chicken factory, people sang all day. I
Yeah.
think at that time, when I was going back many many years ago, the hit album was Meatloaf, and all you heard on the packing floor was 2 out of 3 ain't bad, and all that kind of bursting into song. So I think music has a huge effect on us all. And for me, you know, when I use music, it is very much telling part of the story and telling the audience and informing them how the character is feeling at that specific present time.
So going back a little bit to the sort of the Welsh aspect of this, I know you sort of filmed it we filmed it on the Welsh border, this film.
Yeah, I mean, Flintshire is all around. I mean, Flintshire, I mean, I've come to Chester and I know Wales is 10 minutes down the
Yeah,
road,
yeah.
North Wales. So, yeah, all my home area, all the exteriors are all places I played as a kid. So, the ship, the Duke of Lancaster ship in Mostyn, and, Mushroom Mountain, where I used to go being naughty when I was a teenager,
Yeah.
and all those places, all very familiar to me. And because, you know, even in the film, I believe, you know, for me personally, I think that the landscape is a character in the film.
Definitely.
You know, there's a certain beauty to that landscape that stayed with me, and I think it shaped my humor, my sense of being. And you know, when I walk back into Wales, there's it lifts me enormously, and I think aesthetically, it is just so cinematic. I just will always shoot there. I've shot all my films there apart from one.
Yeah, I mean, I moved only to Wales 2 years ago and I've fallen in love with it. You know, the people,
Yeah.
the place, there's just so much to love here. Yeah, so I can appreciate why you've used such a location. It's just beautiful. So as you said, you sort of shot this film in 26 days, and I was curious to know, and you were saying about sort of there's only been sort of 3 takes roughly for most
Yeah.
sorts of scenes. Was there much sort of rehearsal period before that, or were you just having conversations with your actors?
Mainly conversations with the actors. I think we had a couple of days rehearsal where we went through the mainly for the main three girls who were packing in the chicken factory, to get the physicality of packing and doing their lines as well. But not a huge amount of rehearsal. A couple of hours for the girls to learn how to stilt walk as well. You know, we just had very little time and little money
Yeah.
really to kind of like really throw ourselves in. But it was, you know, it was a long kind of wait, obviously because of COVID. So we spent a lot of time on Zoom and we talked through everything. And by the time we came to shoot, I mean, Lou and Belle had done so much work on their characters. Um, you know, we also knew we had, you know, 9 musical bits to kind of get through. And we kind of worked our way of how, you know, I always say, you know, when Lou always talks about reading the script, she read the Neil Diamond one and kind of, you know, felt this incredible emotion. And you have to, you know, when we're writing the script, you kind of think to yourself, okay, if I'm not getting tingles, the audience won't.
Mm.
So it has to be in the script. And from there, I think talking to the actors and we just had that time on Zoom, and we did have you know, a couple of nights in my hometown to understand the characters and, you know, how the place works, what kind of community we're talking about. A very strong community, a very um, hardworking and kind of funny as well.
Mm.
So we did all those little bits, and as soon as we came to film, it was 2 to 3 takes, nothing over.
I think that's very rare to hear. Like, you know, nowadays people just keep going and going, but you know,
No, we can't afford it.
no. But it feels big budget, Janice. It feels, you know, you've got some
You
real sort of
really think
scale there.
so?
There's, yeah, like, because I do videos as well. So I'm a videographer, like, by day. So I was appreciating like all the crane shots you've got in there. Feels, you know, I thought it was really sort of cinematic with, you know,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
cameras, the
yeah.
performance. Yeah, smashed it. Um, so lean on to that. I really enjoyed the use of colour in this film. You've already spoken about the blue overall jackets. You've had that scene where the sort of the laundry's drying in the wind. And to me, I saw that as like, you know, the light in the dark. That's the sort of the colour, the love shining through. Was that sort of a conscious thing to have these sort of vibrant pops of colour throughout?
Yeah, and again, it goes back to my earlier work. If you look at my shorts, it's exactly the same color palette. I've always used those very bold pink and blues, and I love all that. I love that aesthetically against the landscape because we always have those the kind of brown heathers and the kind of greens and the grey skies. And you know, I always find shooting in Wales this beautiful open sky. It's a blank canvas, and for me, it's throwing those colours against that. And also, lots of it is really about, you know, going back, if you know, politically, I think a lot about, you know, the women that, you know, specifically my mother and these, you know, these women who I feel, you know, the social structure stopped them from really expanding the full amazing potential they had as
Yeah.
human beings. And for me, the color does that as well. And the washing lines, very kind of like prominent in my other work as well. And somebody always says to me, what is it with the washing lines? And I always go back to when I was a very naughty teenager. I think I was rowing with my mum and she was in the garden hanging the washing out. And I said something like, "Ah, you're always hanging washing." And
Mm.
she was so calm. And she
Yeah.
goes, "I do it so people know I'm alive." And
Wow.
it's always stood with me. And it's kind of like, you know, the invisibility of how some women feel in life. And So there's lots of metaphors, visual metaphors in Chuck Chuck Baby, and for me they're there for a purpose. And I think when you watch the film and we talk about women, specifically women from those communities who I always feel potential never fully brought to life by how the world works.
Yeah, I feel like in a lot of films, especially sort of older people, we have sort of the grandma in the bed, they're kind of stereotyped into these sort of characters, but the grandma in this is, effing and jeffing, like she's a full character. Like my grandma, said some of the worst things ever, these are real people, and that sort of shines
Of
through, I
course
think, in
they
the
are.
writing.
Yeah, 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 definitely.
I guess I'm going to ask you a tricky question now, Janice. Where do you
Go on
think
then.
Joanne and Helen are now after this film ends? Where do you think they're off to?
Do you know what? Somebody else has asked me that as well. I think they're very much around that area and they've stayed
Mm,
there because I think they've both given each other something. I think they've both given each other strength.
mm,
Um,
definitely.
and when we talk about small communities and do you escape the town? It's not the town, it's their, it's how they were brought up really, and going back to that whole thing of having very difficult upbringings and then finding beauty in their present lives. I think they found it, and they're very much in my head living in a really lovely caravan somewhere by the sea and having a whale of a time, surrounded by washing lines and lots of kisses.
Yeah, I can feel the love. Yeah, just maybe they've got a dog or some cats and just living
Of
their
course,
best
I've got a
lives.
little beagle.
So I guess with this then, Janice, it tackles a lot of themes, a lot of issues, irrespective of where it is. I think a lot of people can understand, and empathise with these characters, whether in Toronto or Wales, you can really understand what this film's about. What do you hope that people take away?
I had a message on my Instagram out of the blue a couple of about 4 weeks ago from a Canadian lady who had watched the film at the London Lesbian Film Festival, Canada, and wrote to me and said, I just wanted you to know that we watched your film. There was 350 women, uh, probably a lot of them gay. It was sold out, she said, and by the end of the film, people were standing and cheering in the aisles and hugging each other.
Oh, wow.
That's love. And for me, if it's love, then I've done, a job that I wanted to do. And that was all I wanted to do, was just spread a bit of love. And I think we've managed to do that. I look back as a filmmaker, like every other filmmaker, I watch the film and I'm going, oh God, of all the things, because obviously we're independent filmmakers, there's restrictions on time and
Yeah,
budget and everything else. But the most important thing, I think, when you're making a film is that the heart of it is there. And if that heart is beating very strong, then there's nothing else needed. And I think that's what Chuck Chuck Baby has, a very kind of strong beating heart that is translating to everyone.
definitely. I think this is gonna, affect a lot of people maybe in, small towns, big towns, wherever it is. I think the people that see it, it's definitely going to have an impact on them. I'm going to shout about it. Like I say, my mum, get her mates to watch it.
Oh,
I think
definitely.
it's
Please
made for them.
do.
Yeah, the film's out on the 19th of July, so everyone go and see it in the
19th of
cinema.
July. I've got a preview here tonight, sold out in Chester. I've got, I'm in
Amazing.
Cardiff next Friday for a
Mm.
preview there. So, yes. And then obviously the 19th it opens, and fingers crossed, people get out there and support this lovely little Welsh film.
100%. Yeah, people in Cardiff are definitely going to be backing it, so don't worry.
Super.
Thank you so much for your time,
Thank
Janice.
you.